but I just want to say I'm proud of the fact that Unison prioritises anti-racism, and it always has done. And in fact, in the North West region, we did take the issue very seriously, particularly when it started off in the European elections when Nick Griffin first stood for them. We did things like we produced a toolkit for the youth by teachers and youth workers in terms of community cohesion. We arranged meetings with young people who attended faith schools, Muslim schools, Jewish schools, and got the community together on an all-gender basis. So that was very productive, because we feel it's really important that the trade union movement actually goes into our communities and says to our communities that we support them. In terms of how we face this challenge, it's not a new challenge in a way. Trade unionists have always faced challenges. The difference is, it's just a bit harder, but it is nothing new. And I'm proud of the fact to be sitting in this fantastic city of Manchester, the fact that the Peterloo massacre, not far away from where we're sitting, when you think people died for democracy to get the vote. And I think we owe it to our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters who died before us, to fighting for the things that we believe in. And I think the fact that an ordinary person phones up and says, yes, I voted UKIP because I believe in the NHS, what we did is very practical. Because I think in a very private way, it's easy to sit amongst people, fellow believers, and go, oh, those people are idiots, I can't believe how stupid they are. And I think it's wrong, you can't say that on a public platform, because they are ordinary people, they are our people, they are working people, they are the disaffected group of people who feel for a very long time that they've never had a voice. And I don't think we can forget that. I mean, in Lincolnshire, there was an influx of Eastern European workers, I think from Poland, working in a chicken factory. And ordinary working people, first of all, they're saying they're taking away our jobs, and then they're undercutting our wages. When in actual fact, what had happened, it was the supermarkets went to the producer and said, we used to pay you £3 a chicken, now we're paying you £2. And what that comes down to is about the capitalist argument. And whether you like it or not, we live in a capitalist world, and we have to be pragmatic about that in terms of how we challenge it. And the fact that Joe made reference to their treasurer, who was meeting the city bankers, that is what they're really about, and that is what Nigel Farage is really about. And I think we need to keep reminding people, you might think he's a decent bloke, you can go down the pub, have a pint with him, but he's a commodities broker. That is what he does. He has publicly said on a platform, when asked about the cuts, the austerity measures, he said, cuts? What cuts? There haven't been any. So in practical terms, what Unison did, we produced this. 10 rights unions have helped win for working people inside Europe, and we distributed it as far and wide. And we can only do as much as we can do. We depend on the people who volunteer to be activists. So everybody in this room, if you're fortunate enough to be in work, I hope you're in a trade union, and if you're not, really now is the time to join. And those of you who are, now is the time to become active, because we're not, even though we're portrayed as insurance companies, we're not. We work on the basis that we volunteer. We volunteer because we act as a collective, and it is that collective principle where we are strong and we can fight together. And it's about joining up with community groups and with faith groups. The other sort of thing we do, we produce this. It's a newsletter that goes, we have 130 branches in the North West region, and we are bigger actually in membership than some European countries, by the way. And each of those branches elect delegates to the North West region, and those delegates all get this information. And you know what it's like, you get, the junk mail, you get all sorts of things via email as well. You don't always have time to read everything, but we live in hope that at least, 50% of what we send out is read by our activists and shared. So I think in terms of going forward, we do have to not forget it's ordinary working people who are the vote, because they are the few and we are the many, and we need to be talking to the many, and we need to be going to people and saying, and I think within the trade union movement in general, but particularly in my own union, I feel we haven't really tackled the real issue of race. On some levels, we've been fantastic in producing information, disseminating it, organising meetings, talking to ordinary members. But I think to some degree, we haven't gone far enough. There was a time, I've been a member of my branch. In November, it'll be 30 years. And in the sister union, the last conference I went to in Nalgo, there was a big debate on immigration, and it was absolutely fantastic because we won the debate to say Nalgo's position was opposition to all immigration control, which is my personal view, because I believe immigration control is the clearest manifestation of state racism. It labels black people as in non-white European, anybody from the Southern Hemisphere, a problem whose numbers have to be controlled. And I think there's a distinct difference in terms of Europe and the economy and businesses and movement of people. And yes, people being targeted now, the workers from Europe, people generally the Eastern Europeans, but the significant difference from a black race working class perspective is this. Future generations to come, those Eastern European workers, if they stay in Lincoln working in those factories, their children who grow up here, their next generation will not face the kind of racism that my child will, my future grandchildren, your children, and that's a significant difference. British racism, I think, is very unique because it's about, you could be 5 generations here, but you'll always be the immigrant. And I think the trade union movement haven't tackled that. And that is a wider political context, but the significance of why I'm raising it is that the point about Britishness and the point that the ordinary working people who say, oh, in this town, you know, you can't hear any English spoken. Well, that may well be true. And while some of us want to celebrate that, I don't see that as a threat. But I think as a trade union movement, we have to recognise that some ordinary white working class people do see it as a threat. And that gives us the platform to argue, well, not to argue, to debate and explain the context. Well, actually, firstly, we're here because you were there. There's an historical context to it. It's about British imperialism and colonialism. And actually, whilst it doesn't manifest itself in the same way, because British Empire these days is not the same as it was 200 years ago, those principles do still exist because they tie in with capitalism and neoliberalism, which is what it's all about, which is the real threat to us. And those are the kinds of discussions we have to have with ordinary working people and say, actually, within a trade union context, people go, well, what's Gaza got to do with us? Why are we defending Cubans and, you know, South Africa? Well, apartheid's over. Well, actually, no, it's not. What's it got to do with us? A union's supposed to defend workers' rights, bread and butter issues. And the response to that, and we have to have that debate, and this is where I think there's a slight failing on part of the trade union movement to say, well, actually, in an international context, think about this. We fight for workers' rights here. We fight for decent wages, for training, for good, decent public services. Because in the 21st century, what reflects how a society values its community, it's how it treats it. And at the moment, our government is treating us, working people, very badly. Okay, and I think ordinary people would agree with that. And you have to go, well, look, the attacks that we're facing are the same attacks workers are facing across the world. Look at Rana Plaza with the collapse that people died in the garment industry. Ordinary working people here, actually, when you talk to them about the issues, they understand those principles. So what we're up against is their ignorance. There's going to be a small group of people who are just hardline racists. And I agree, and I think the UKIP as a party is different to BNP. Clearly BNP were fascists. They had an entirely different agenda. But UKIP, without a shadow of doubt, is racist. And that we have to keep talking the talk. And from a trade union perspective, it's about having the coffee break chats with ordinary working people. Decent working people who sometimes say the most bizarre things. And like shocking things about UKIP. And you do have to talk to them. What do you think about their policies? They want to scrap every single workers' rights that we have fought for in the trade union movement. They want to remove that from you. That is what they stand for. So whilst I think it has a place to have a rally, to go to lobby, to go on marches, you can't do that in isolation. There has to be many strands to this challenge. And the biggest thing that we can all do, you know, if you don't want to put leaflets to a door, if you don't want to do phone calls, if you don't want to go on a march and rally and demonstration, it's simply just to talk. Talk to your neighbours. If you go drinking in a pub on a Saturday night, talk to the people you've been drinking with for the last 10 years. You have to listen to what their concerns and fears are, and you need to break that down. And just to finish the point I made about people who complain about British, we're not British anymore. Well, actually, groups of people, they just move for economic reasons. Why? Well, firstly, our communities, our foremothers and our forefathers, and by the way, I love the fact this is an all-women platform, you don't have to see that, so respect to you for that. It's the fact that we were invited here as workers, and the NHS would collapse without us. There wouldn't have been a public transport system. And how ironic that Enoch Powell designed a similar poster to the Uncle Sam Wants You, and went out to the West Indies and said, come to the motherland. So what do you expect? If you invite communities, non-white communities, because of imperialism and colonialism, 40, 50, 60 years ago, they come here and do the jobs that ordinary white working people didn't want to do, the crappiest jobs, and then they have relationships, then they have families, and they have families, and we're the product of that. And that's why in certain areas there's a significant higher number, concentrated number of people from a certain community. Hello, that's ecology, that's life, that's evolution, that's how it goes. Ultimately, though, they are working people the same as you, fighting for the same things, have the same values, believe in fighting for a just society, for a better world, for decent education for all, for free NHS access, free at the point of care for everybody, just fighting for the same things. And those are the conversations we need to have, and we need to say, whilst you feel disaffected, and yes, Labour, shame on you. And I am a card-carrying member, and my family go, why? And I go, means to an end, better the word, but when I meet some people within the Labour Party, I think, yeah, that's why I'm here. There are some good people there, but shame on them. They didn't do enough before the European elections last year to challenge UKIP. And we, everyone who is in the Labour Party, we need to keep challenging in terms of their policy on the immigration question. Let's not let them jump on that bandwagon, because that, I think, is what will happen. It's that, well, we can be more hardline than them. But that's why we need to keep having the talk on an ordinary level with your neighbours. That is where it starts. The neighbours who you've lived next door to, shown respect to, and they respect you. It's to say to them, I'm not saying you're an idiot, and I believe your fears, but you need to be fully aware. To make a real judgment, you need to know all the facts of what UKIP believe in and what they stand for, and they do not in any way, shape or form represent you and what you deserve and what you believe in. And that's the way forward. It's about talking the talk, it's about getting your own unions to produce the information and sharing that information and looking at the link. And it's a workers' issue. It comes down to that. Ordinary working people, that disaffected silent voice who feel that nobody's spoken to them for a long time. Well, we say from a trade union perspective, we will keep on fighting for you and your rights. And that's the way forward. Thank you.